Now, if you had realized or had recognized that dark object 5 to 6 feet long in that area near the flagpole, had you realized that was a body, what would you have done?
I would have, called 911.
That was Julie Nagel testifying about a black blob she saw on the lawn of Albert's family home. Now, Nagel is a friend of Brian Albert Jr. and was at the house for his 23rd birthday party. Now, this is the same house that is part of the crime scene in relation to the death of Boston police officer John O'Keefe. Remember, his girlfriend Karen Reed stands accused of second-degree murder in his death. Now, throughout the trial, we have heard testimony on whether or not witnesses saw John O'Keefe's body on the lawn of Brian Albert's Canton, Massachusetts home. Some witnesses testified that nothing caught their eye in front of the Albert residence, while others had a different perspective. We'll let our viewers, along with our panel, be the judges here. So why don't we begin by picking up the rest of Julie Nagel's testimony. Here's more of what she had to say about her observations while at the Albert's residence.
I did notice behind Sarah and Jen, I did notice something out of the ordinary, like a black blob in the ground by the flagpole.
You claim now to have seen a black object in the snow, correct?
Yes.
You never before ever told any investigator that what you actually saw was a black blob, correct?
I don't remember.
You also never, ever told any investigator that this black object that you described was actually 5 feet or 6 feet long, correct?
Correct, yes.
So that's what Julie Nagel says she saw while she was at the Alberts home the night John O'Keefe died. Let's hear from other witnesses who were also at the house that night.
And when you look through the blinds, what is it that you saw out in front of your house at that time?
There was another car that I hadn't recognized before. It was a dark SUV. Yeah, so the first time I looked, I would say it was closer towards the mailbox, maybe a little bit in front of the mailbox. And then the second time, the last time I looked out the window, it had moved further down, closer to, I'll say, the flagpole. So closer that way, it went down that way.
You also testified earlier that you saw tire tracks in the snow, correct?
Yep.
So you'd agree that the visibility and lighting in front of the house was good enough that you were able to see tire tracks in the snow, correct?
Sure.
But you did not see a 220-pound man lying in the snow in your front yard.
No, I didn't see that.
Against that white snow, did you see a black baseball cap?
Absolutely not.
Where you also did not see a black sneaker?
Absolutely not.
And you certainly did not see a 6'2" man on the lawn of your girlfriend's parents' home, correct?
No, I did not.
On January 29th of 2022, you were there at your parents' house from around midnight until about 1:45?
About a little bit after 1:45, yes.
Okay, and during that span of time, almost 2 hours, you never saw anyone pull up outside, correct?
I personally did not.
No, and you personally did not look out the window either, correct?
No, I did not.
And you personally never heard anything out of the ordinary outside, correct?
That is correct.
Right.
I noticed a car coming up the hill towards us.
And can you describe the other car that you saw coming up?
It was a black SUV.
Did you recognize it as something you had seen before?
No, sir.
During the time that you were outside of the house, did you hear any noises or see, or hear anything coming from that vehicle in front of you?
No, sir, I did not.
Now, let's bring in my guest, Alexis Rosenberg, trial attorney, federal litigator, to discuss this with me. Now, you just heard and watched all of that, Alexis. When we were watching it together and Julie Nagel was on the stand yesterday, the first time she even testified about seeing a blob in the snow. So what do you think about this testimony?
I mean, the testimony that we just watched, it's so conflicting because it's not consistent. And the fact that somebody would walk out, they see a black blob, although we do have to keep in mind that there was a lot of drinking from the testimony, it appears, and doesn't mention it to any investigator. It's not mentioned at all. And now it's coming out that there was this 6 to 7 foot long blob. Once again, it's just questions. I mean, it really goes these inconsistencies to the defense and reasonable doubt.
Yeah, and Alexis, apparently there was no testimony from her in front of the grand jury about any blob, or else I'm sure we would have heard it. Do you think then that she comes off still as a credible witness and that people will just say, oh, it's eyewitness testimony, it's unreliable, but she's credible in a lot of things that she told us, and we're going to believe some and throw away others?
I'm not sure how the jury is going to take it. I mean, it's on the fence. Is she credible? I mean, she's coming out and saying that there was this body there that she didn't see. I'm not quite sure how the jury is going to interpret it. The takeaway is definitely that it isn't consistent. There's no consistency really in her testimony, because I mean, that's a pretty big thing prior to going on the stand to say that you saw this when we're talking about a murder case.
Yeah, so we also heard, as you know, from Brian Albert Jr., Caitlin Albert, Tristan Morris, Caitlin's boyfriend, and Brian Nagel. What do we think about the different opinions about whether they saw a body on the lawn of the Alberts' residence?
It appears from the testimony that I mean, what's coming across, that I think the way the jury is going to view it, is they're not really sure what they saw, because it seems from the testimony that they weren't necessarily really paying specific attention to anything. And although we just heard some testimony that it was the SUV was out of the ordinary, they hadn't seen this SUV, it wasn't so out of the ordinary that they were really directing much of their attention to it.
Yeah. And then with all that, then how are we going to understand, if we are sitting on the jury, what really happened to John O'Keefe? And I guess that's the question, is the prosecution proving their case beyond a reasonable doubt as to who killed John O'Keefe, if he was killed by somebody that's in that courtroom?
Well, I mean, they have to prove that the defendant, Karen Reed, killed somebody, not that somebody killed him. So that all of this is really going towards the defense. It's really going towards, all right, we're not sure. I mean, yes, he is the deceased, and we know that, but we're not really sure if it was her. I mean, the testimony that we just heard in the previous segment about the person in the SUV, the witness could not say for sure that that was the defendant. They just said that there was a female in that car, and they testified that the light was on and that they could see very well inside the car.
So let me give you one final question before we take the break. As you know, in any high-profile case, but in any case, really, the jury is looking at the defendant as we saw her there. Is there anything about her demeanor that the jury will take away to form their verdict or form their opinions that is not spoken in that courtroom?
Well, and like you said, they're going to look at the way she reacts to certain testimony, any defendant, not just this specific one. They're looking and taking in how she's perceived, if she looks like she's credible, just by not even saying anything, and her reactions, which is really kind of hairy in the sense that, you know, people react to different things in different ways. But I am not seeing anything that I've witnessed that stands out to me that is an inappropriate reaction or a startling reaction.
All right. As you know, there's much more evidence to come in, and the ultimate judge on this case is that jury. So we'll have to wait and see how everything unfolds. But in the meantime, we're continuing to monitor the boyfriend cop murder trial out of Norfolk County, Massachusetts. So stick with Law and Crime for gavel-to-gavel coverage on this fascinating case. I'm Linda Kenney Baden, and you're watching Law and Crime.